My name is Keacte. I'm the CEO of FUN.inc, founder of the public calendar NPSI.ROCKS. I recognise a couple of names, which is good. So during the course of this presentation, I'm going to sort of run you through some of the fleet commands that you may well hear on an NPSI fleet. It could in fact be on any fleet, in all fairness. And these commands, understanding it will give you basically the most of your experience within the realms of NPSI. So let's have a look-see. So what basically the presentation is going to take the following format, and I'm going to try and explain what the term means, why it matters, and your action in response to the command. The what it means section should be fairly sort of self-evident when we go through the slides. The why it matters section, however, is likely to be more sort of involved. So as an SC, listening to the fleet commander, listening to the fleet commander in EVE is absolutely crucial. This is because the FC has got the bigger picture. They're not just telling people what to shoot. They're managing fleet movements. They're managing target calling, enemy compositions. Understanding enemy compositions, intel from scouts, logistics, so on and so forth. Coordination, survivability, and any exit plans that may be needed. Whilst you might see your ship and a few hostiles on grid, the FC will see the entire battlefield. So listening as a skill, as a life skill, you will learn faster by listening, and it will also help you anticipate calls before they're made. So just listen with keen intent, sort of thing. And it will also give you the confidence to potentially strike out as a new FC yourself. So it's a very critical thing, actually. Now, so obviously listening to the FC matters because it gives you that tactical clarity and makes coordination easy, or easier, I should say. It also allows for more sort of fleet cohesion, as disobedience causes chaos, it causes separation and potentially, ultimately, death. Communications efficiency means clear, calm, faster reactions with less confusion. And so it's kind of a learning opportunity as you will improve your PvP skills more by listening and then replicating. So it's kind of like the following as such. So good fleet mates make good fleet and everyone benefits. Now, with regard to your own actions in response to the command, that will vary. It could be do nothing, or it could be do something. In some cases, it could actually be multiple things. One, there will be a cause and effect and a kind of a trigger response to a number of, one command might end up causing a number of actions, sort of thing. So now, just one caveat before we kind of step into the content. This isn't a definitive list of orders that you're going to hear. It's a list of the most common orders that I think will be said during your first NPSI fleet. So without further ado, probably the first one is fairly simple. In EVE Online, Xing up signals your intention to join a fleet. And in order to join that fleet, you must write an X in the appropriate NPSI group channel and wait for the fleet invite. Now, those of you that are here in the sort of previous presentation, sometimes the invite will be immediate. Sometimes it may take a while. The fleet commander's got a lot of stuff going on. They're setting up the fleet, balancing watch lists, getting skirmishers invited, so on and so forth. So if they're very busy forming the fleet, just be patient. Don't spam the channel because obviously it then floods the channel, so on and so forth. So in the event that you're missed, X up again after a few minutes. Now, most NPSI communities use an in-game chat channel. There's loads of obviously on NPSI.ROCKS. There's all those channels listed. So to get into that fleet, you need to make sure that you're in the right place and that you X up at the right time. There's no point in Xing up an hour and a half after the fleet. There's no point in Xing up an hour and a half before the fleet. Everything's in EVE time and just X up in the correct channel. Now, I always say this, naked clones. So for the most part, this means that you should be in a clone that's clear of any implants and training enhancements. You could interpret this a number of ways, and I think this is a reasonable thing to say. If naked clones are needed, it's likely that the FC will be flying quite aggressively. In NPSI, I think it's probably a fair thing to say, and you're more likely to not be returning in your ship or in a pod or a capsule. Now, either way, whatever the parameters of the roam are, of the fleet are, make sure that you check your clone is set to a sensible home station and that you're not in a training clone and that you're in an appropriate clone, basically. I say it on every fleet. We always get one person that ends up PvPing for 2.5, 3, 4 hours in a training clone that's worth 2, 3, 4, 5 bill. We've had worse. Fortunately, we've not had anybody lose it. Which is always nice. I ain't SRP in that. Now, setting desto is fairly obvious. It's exactly that. It's setting destination to a location linked in fleet. Now, to do so, occasionally people don't know this. Occasionally, majority of people do know this, I'd say. To do this, you right-click on the link, which appears in fleet, and you set destination to that location. Now, if you're moving as a fleet, the FC will give you instruction when you reach that destination as to what to do. But for the meantime, that is where you should be heading upon instruction. It's really, really important to listen to the FC's command with regard to destinations, as often multiple destinations will be bounced into fleet. So if you turn off your focus for just even 30 seconds, you might get a secondary destination or stick to the primary destination and so on and so forth. You might end up going completely the wrong direction. One thing I would say is that it's always worthwhile, if you are moving, just to sort of scroll out from your ship to see what other people are doing. And if you've got other people with you, chances are you're in the right location. If you've got other people with you and you're in the wrong location, there's a lot of people that are wrong. So it's probably more of a miscommunication from the FC. So that's not your problem. That will be rectified by the FC. But I think for the most part, just keep an ear open, basically. Now, standing orders, I kind of covered this the other day. Standing orders is a military term and is something that you should do every time without the need for instruction. For example, standing orders on gates are to orbit gate at 500. For me, this is what I call the standing orders. Standing orders on entry are to hold cloak. So it's a simple thing. When you land on a gate, you orbit 500 or just hold. It can sometimes vary, but the FC will communicate that. And standing orders, when you actually take that gate and jump, it will be to hold cloak. Now, there are a number of reasons for standing orders to exist, and principally this kind of helps with fleet cohesion. It prevents fleet members entering systems that have not yet been scouted or where there are scouts hunting targets. And I can't stress how important it is. Standing orders need to be obeyed in order that targets don't get spooked and don't get sort of scared off, so they don't run away and get safe. Generally, if one person takes a gate, and this is one thing I've kind of noticed, it's the old lemming kind of mentality. As soon as one person hears a gate fire, I need to take the gate, I need to take the gate. And all of a sudden you get 4 or 5, 10% of a 40-man fleet, straight away you've got 4 or 5 people through, if you see what I mean. So it's super important to just heed those kind of instructions. Now, I always mention about support pilots. Support pilots in EVE they bring specialized ships to the fleet and they provide added value to the fleet commander. It could be things like interdictors, command desis, booshes, links, link ships, for example, logistics, electronic attack frigates, combat probers. Support pilots, you'll hear the term used. I'll say X up for support pilots. And if you think, I can do that, let's just step up and do it. If you fancy doing a scouting, well, try it, give it a go. Support pilots can also include members of the fleet who volunteer to scan directional scanner, and also watching local. These are really important roles as it allows the FC to kind of focus on tactical and strategic movement rather than just them hitting their directional scanner and watching local. It just takes the kind of the pressure off, for want of a better expression. Now, there are some other support pilots. Obviously, I've not listed all of them, but for the most part, the main ones that you're likely to see. I can tell you about having a dedicated intel officer. I can tell you about having an E-war officer, a logi anchor. I can tell you about having an FC. I've actually toyed with the idea of literally just giving somebody the fleet movement to just move the fleet to get to a fight, and I'll S it once we actually get there. But so that it then means that the FC is then fresh when you actually get there. I've toyed with the idea. I've not run that yet because it puts pressure on something else, sort of thing. So, but there's loads of roles that I haven't included. But for the most part, they're the ones that you'll see. So one of the main things, one of the ones you'll hear a lot is align. Now, align means exactly that. Align means to set your ship moving in the direction of a location, but not to warp. So in effect, you're facing your ship in that direction. It's really important to be aligned when the FC says that. If local pops up and you get 60 people into local and there's gate flashes on the in gate and we're 30k off, if you're not aligned, chances are if the FC warps fleet, because you're not aligned, you will get left behind, which means that you're a sitting duck. So it's really important to be aligned when the FC says so, in case the threat on grid changes and the FC needs to warp you immediately. If you're not aligned, you will not warp the fleet and you'll be left behind. So when the FC says it, just always be aligned. To align, I'm presuming, again, apologies if you guys know this, you probably will know this, but to align, you've got a number of options. Right click on the context menu and align to the object that you're wanting to go to. So planet 1, right click, select planet 1, and then align to. Even simpler is just to double click in space towards that celestial. If the FC broadcasts that location, you can just align towards that location just by literally just double clicking in that direction. And that will see you as aligned as the next person. So warping fleet, it's pretty simple. Warping fleet is exactly that. The FC will initiate warp for the whole fleet so that we land together. There are two types of fleet warp. I call it a cold warp. I know that some people get confused when I sort of say cold warp. What do you mean by cold warp? But cold warp is where the FC warps the fleet without anybody aligning. So they're kind of warping blind, for want of a better expression. So everybody aligns in their own time, and you all kind of piecemeal will warp out depending on your orientation on the grid when you spawn. And you'll land at your destination at varying times. And then by contrast, there's an aligned warp, which means that you're all aligned at the same time. You're all aligned facing the correct direction, the same orientation. And when the FC clicks warp or warps the fleet, you will all warp together, and you'll be in that kind of bubble, for want of a better expression, that you will see when you're in a fleet. An aligned warp will mean that you will arrive together. It's great for when you take on an engagement. You're landing together. You can all spread points. You've got all of a sudden 20 people, 30 people, 40 people all landing at the same time on a fleet. So for argument's sake, you've got probes up and you land at 0 on them. You can chuck points on them straight away, spread your points and so on and so forth. And it's a fantastic way of catching hostiles off, unexpectedly. When the FC says warping fleet, don't do anything. If you control space, or if it just hands off your keyboard in effect, don't cancel or override the warp unless there is a specific reason, like you don't want to be in that warp because you are going to be warped at 0 and you're in Logi, or you don't want to be warped to that location because you're in a pod, for example, whatever it might be. But for the most part, if you're in a ship and the FC wants to take the engagement, take the fleet warp. Jump or jump on contact, they're fairly self-explanatory. If you land on a gate, to enter the next system, you've got to take that gate, so you have to jump. Jump on contact is an extended version of this, which means when you land on the gate, you activate that gate. As soon as you land, you jump. Now, again, it's kind of linking back to one of the previous ones. It's really important you do that immediately, or you will likely get left behind in the next fleet warp or through the next systems. Jumping on contact allows fleets to move super quickly, sort of through regions, and you can traverse New Eden within a blink of an eye. You can be 3 or 4 regions within sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes sort of thing. So it's really, really important that if you can activate that gate as soon as you land. I mean, quite often when I'm streaming, people hear my mouse click just frantically clicking, and that's me spamming the gate. I don't, it's not going to speed it up, but psychologically, I think it does for me. And so it's essential that the fleet members try to move as quickly as possible when the SC says jump on contact, because the next action will likely to be aligning and warping to the next gate. Hold gate, again, is fairly simple. Holding gate means stop on the gate and do not activate the gate. Depending on what the FC sort of says, it could be hold gate orbit, or it could be hold gate just control space and just don't do anything. Some FCs will decide to hold the gate without moving in case they want to boosh the fleet away. So if there's a hostile target come through, or if they need to get away from the gate, or they want to try and boosh a target away from the gate, it allows the whole of our friendly fleet to get booshed with the hostile target if we're all clustered up in a bubble. Whereas if you orbit the gate at sort of 500, you're all spread around. So chances are you're not going to get that boosh. So it depends on the FC. My personal preference is hold gate, orbit 500, because you're within gate activation range. But you've got your velocity up in case anything does come through. You're not starting from a stationary motion, and if a target does come through, they're going to spawn 12k from you. So you're always going to be within sort of 10, 11, 12, 11, 12, something like that for that target. It's essential on that one that this command is acted on in order that the threat or target the far side of the gate is not spooked by you entering a system. So it's super, super, super important to hold on the gate, like I kind of alluded to previously. So hold cloak, again, is fairly obvious. A lot of these are fairly obvious, but if you're not used to flying in fleets, it might catch you, catch you off guard, for want of a expression. Now, holding cloak after jumping through a gate allows you to stay cloaked. Your session timer is obviously 60 seconds. You've got 60 seconds in vulnerability. It buys the FC some time. It allows them to analyze what's on grid. It allows them to analyze what's on scan. And it is really important that cloaks are held. If one ship decloaks, often others will follow. It goes back to what I sort of said earlier. Just listen to the FC. If they say hold cloak, the FC will be super conscious that there is 60 seconds. They will not let you just despawn. And provided you've all taken the gate at the same time as the FC, you will all have the same gate cloak timer. If you've taken the gate 10 seconds before, that's on you, because the FC hasn't called it. Because if he's or they are, spawning after 60 seconds and you're already at 50, you've obviously taken the gate earlier. Now, I actually sometimes use this tactic. I will hold the cloak of the fleet, and it's a trick because the chasing enemy, they think when they take that gate, they can't see you on scan, so they walk to the next gate, and you're actually holding a cloak on that gate. So you're like gone a bit spooky on them in that they think you've already walked out, so you can then just crash gate and completely evade them. It doesn't work if one person decloaks, because you'll get aggressed, and we're all still here, sort of cloaked. It's really important, like I sort of said, a lot of these are so important that this command is adhered to, as it quite often can cause a bit of a cascade effect for the remainder of the fleet. They'll begin to doubt their own actions, and they'll begin to doubt or their recall of what the FC has said. If you hear hold cloak, just keep your eye on that timer, top left, the blue one, I think it is, sort of cyan one, I think it is, and just keep an eye on it, really. The FC will not let that count down without making an action. So burn back to gate. I use this a lot to try and split enemies, to try and get people to aggress far sides of gates, and so on and so forth. Burn back to gate it basically means put your propulsion mod on, so activate your MWD or your afterburner, approach the gate as fast as you can. Now, if you have to overheat, say if you're in an AB frigate or AB cruiser or whatever it might be, you might have to overheat. Once you're back at gate, if you press Control Space on your keyboard, you will arrive at 0 and you will not bounce off the gate. Sometimes in frigates and cruisers and so on and so forth, you can go so quickly into the gate, you will bounce off and end up 5k off, and then you can't activate that gate. If you Control Space, chances are you will stay within that 2.5 kilometer activation range. And if you need to, this will allow you to activate that gate, just because obviously proximity. Now, if you do overheat your prop mod, and this has happened a couple of times with people, is if you overheat your prop mod to get back to gate, make sure you turn off the overheat. By burning back to gate, this allows you to potentially take the gate again, but it also allows you to get a 0 on the gate to maximize your chance of tackling any ship that might just come through. Your warp disruption length on your point, for example, it's basically within reach of the hostile pilot's gate code, for want of a great expression. So you can easily tackle stuff. If you're 0, obviously. So Starburst, I use this quite a lot. Starburst effectively means just burning in a random direction away from your current location. If you've just come from a gate, like if you come from a gate, burn away from that gate in the fastest possible way. So literally, if you imagine the gate is directly behind your ship, just burn completely the opposite direction. Don't burn through the gate because you will be at 0 on gate, or you will pass the gate near where the hostiles are. But to burn away from the gate, to do this, you've got to overheat your prop mod. So put overheat on your MWD, your AB, or what have you. Put as much range as possible, and then zoom out on your camera, and then look to align to something that is near your alignment where you're facing. So a planet, a celestial, a structure, whatever it might be. It will then, on the basis that you're aligned, it will allow you to warp out with great ease. If you have to kind of zoom out and then the FC says warp planet 1 and planet 1's behind you, all that's going to do is kill your speed, allow an interceptor or a AF to get right on top of you, and you will get scrammed. You want to be able to do it in such a way that you lose no velocity, but you also keep your distance and your range that you've created, that safety buffer zone between you and the hostiles. Starbursting is an incredibly effective way of making it almost impossible for one ship to be primaried. Because if you do it in a controlled manner, and I will literally do, right, we're going to starburst after 3. So we're going to starburst after 3, 3, 2, 1, burn, burn, burn. Overheat your prop mods, burn, 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 burn. Just random directions, get off grid, get off grid, get off grid. And that's exactly what I'll say. It is a case of just overheating your prop mod and just getting off grid and just walking. It's hugely effective because if you all decloak at the same time, there's no obvious one primary, because all of a sudden on their overviews they will see 30 ships. They won't have the ability to decipher what is the primary. This is one of the reasons, actually, and just as a ever so slight segue, this is one of the reasons on my fleets that I try for continuity of ship types, because if there is no obvious primary, you're not going to stick out. If you've got 30 Raptors, you are not going to stick out. If you've got 30 Raptors and all of a sudden 3 dudes want to bring fast warping cruisers, those fast warping cruisers are going to be primary because they're not going to be able to have the same overheat. They're probably going to get scrammed. They're probably going to get webbed, and they will be on their own. So it's really important that if starbursting, when you overheat, you don't burn out your prop mod, because you're going to have to swap out using a mobile depot. That will just delay things if you need to refit. I covered this the other day, and spread points. When you're in a fleet, you'll often hear the term spreading tackle. I say spread points, spread tackles, or combination of both in between. Effectively, what this means, this is exactly that. It's spreading your tackle through the grid to ensure that all targets are locked down. It's effectively spreading tackle means not tackling something that is already tackled. If there are 10 targets on grid, once you hear target 1 tackled, you will you move to the secondary target. Once you hear the secondary target tackled, move to the third, then move to the fourth, and so on and so forth. At no point should there be a secondary point on a tackle on a ship, unless it's something that needs multiple points. Hopefully, then you will get to grips with the fact that if you hear 1, you just scroll to the next person. So if ABC gets tackled, move to DEF. If DEF gets tackled, move to XYZ sort of thing. This will allow the FC to kill all the targets that are on grid. And spreading tackle and calling that you have a target tackled is really important, so the FC knows what targets to move to next. There's no point in not tackling something and shooting something, because if it's not tackled, it will warp out. All you're going to do is waste ammo, and so on and so forth. So it's really important. Now, I use this quite a lot. Warp at ranges. It's likely to be when a target's kind of warped away and is warped to an obvious celestial, planet, or structure, whatever it might be. If the FC calls you to warp at ranges, select the celestial that's called, I should say, and warp at a range, but you vocalize it on comms. So this will allow other people within the fleet to warp at ranges that have not been covered. So if you hear somebody say, I'm warping at 10, select another distance. Go for 50, go for 100. Then that way we've got a range of distances covered at that celestial. If that target then lands at that location, we can then have a distance within that grid where we've got greater opportunity. If we all warp at 0 and they warp at 100, it then means we're 100 kilometers away. Whereas if one warps at 100, one warps at 90, 80, 70, 60, so on and so forth, it allows a greater coverage of and a greater opportunity chance. Also, if they're a cloaky ship, chances are you will land on them or warp through them. So if they warp at 100 and somebody else warps at 100, they will land on top of them. Once that ship is then tackled, everybody can then kill that target. So in effect, if you hear one person say a distance, choose another distance until such time all the distances are covered. Warping at 0 will mean, at most you will be 100 kilometers away from the target. Warping at 50 means that you'll be 50 in front or behind, depending on where they've gone to. And if you get that greater coverage, it allows you to catch targets that are panic warped. I like to hear noughts, 50s, and 100, because if they've walked at any of the other distances in between, one person is always only going to be sort of 25, 30k maximum away, which is well within an overheat point range. If they go at 70, 100 to 70, 30k overheat. If it's 50, they're 50 to 70, 20k, so on and so forth. So it's a very, very easy way. It's really a case of listening, reacting, vocalizing really, really quickly. Once you get that across to the FC and your other fleet mates, they'll understand exactly where you're going. Broadcast for reps. Everybody knows this one pretty much. It means requesting assistance from logistic pilots, typically when your ship is taking damage. This is done by using broadcast buttons in game, which sends a message to the logistics pilot indicating that you need help. Effective broadcasting involves doing it early and before your ship is critically damaged, and being clear about your needs and not spamming the broadcast. It's a really, really easy broadcasting for reps is a way to quickly alert Logi, who specialize in repairing and repping other ships, that you need their help. It's kind of crucial for large scale battles and when facing damage. So just get your broadcasts in sort of appropriately. That's generally why we have Logi on grid, is to get you repped up and patched up. Check. So this in effect, it is quieten down. The FC or other pilots might be about to say something important. It could be a scout that's noticed something. If you've got critical information and if you feel it is critical that the FC needs to know, don't be shy in using the word check. No, don't be shy in saying check. I'd rather know than not know. Say this once and then wait for the FC to acknowledge, and then share the information. So a good use of example of break or check would be break, Keacte and XYZ system, 20-man caracal fleet with Logi support, fast tackle and dictors on your in-gate. That would warrant a break in the FC, in comms for the FC. Use it sparingly. It's the more times it gets used, the less importance it takes, the less gravitas it takes. Now, the target's been tackled and you hear point on XYZ. That is a scout or skirmisher that has tackled something, and that is the person advising the FC that they've tackled something. The next action is going to be dictated by the FC. Now, it could be an automatic reaction by the FC whereby they set a destination to a location where that scout is, or it could be that they warp to that person within the system. Either way, it's really, really super important that when you hear somebody say point on XYZ, just clear all chatter. It just allows the FC to listen and basically make the necessary orders to the fleet. Every second counts on this. If the target is in system, we've got a skirmisher on grid alone, they're potentially vulnerable with a hostile ship potentially shooting at them. The more time, the more time that's actually wasted, it will impact the survivability of that scout. If the target's far away, then the FC will need to set a destination, and they will say things like best speed, jump on contact, warp next gate in each system. They may even just say best speed and not even say jump on contact, so on and so forth. In order that you need to then travel to the desto as soon as you can in order to support that skirmisher. Now, so obviously the skirmisher's out and about, he's got a point on target, he's called it, he will then say X is in fleet. X's in fleet means warp to that person upon entering that system. So you've traveled those 4 hops to get to the skirmisher, you've entered the gate, and then he's put X's in the fleet, and or his name is there, somebody's dragged his name. Just right click on his name and then click warp to. This could be a scout. If they say X is in fleet, for example, it could be a scout that's got a ship tackled. It could be somebody at a perch or a ping, so on and so forth, that you need to warp to. Either way, by right-clicking their name in fleet and then selecting warp, you're going to land at that location and be able to act accordingly. Yeah. So dependent on the nature of the request and the nature of the person that you're warping to, use caution though. And this is very, very important. The reason why I say this is just to add one caveat to warp to an X's in fleet is if it's a cloak ship, you don't want to be warping at 0 because you will decloak that person. So you need to pay very, very fixed attention as to what is being said in terms of who you're warping to and so on and so forth. This is a term, anchor. It's used quite a lot in, I'm going to say, in larger fleets, so on and so forth. I tend not to use it as much. I do sometimes use it. Yeah, sometimes it gets a bit lost in translation, though. I think sometimes, but an anchor is a designated pilot that all fleet members keep at range or approach. Having an anchor is really useful in fleet maneuvers for which coordination and proximity is essential. So things like for sort of logistics, for remote repairs, for optimal ranges on guns and so on and so forth. And it's used to keep the fleet together during a fight so that all ships are at their correct optimals and so the FC can coordinate accordingly. So to anchor, you would right click on the anchor. So that is the person. And you would then just keep at range. This will allow the anchor to, in effect, dictate your position on grid and navigate you because they're steering their ship around the grid and you're literally just keeping it range. So your ship is basically just following their ship. And it allows you to allows them to navigate you whilst you focus on loading the correct ammos and applying damage. It allows you to focus on overheats and so on and so forth. It's really, really, really super important though that you listen to the FC on this because chances are they're going to be saying things like put your prop mod on, so turn on your afterburner, turn on your MWD. So if you don't do that at the same time, you're going to be going at 500 meters a second. The remainder of your gang is going to be doing 2,000 meters a second. So you're going to fall behind if you don't listen to those kind of calls. If not just that, you might end up split from the fleet, which will leave you isolated. You might also fall out of Logi range, which is obviously important because if you do then get primaried, you're not going to be in a position where Logi aren't going to run back if you're in a 50-man Thera.ROCKS Navy fleet, running in a nullsec blob or what have you. They're not going to run back for you because that's not what they do. From experience, that's one of the things we do in the fleets that I run is we'll pick off targets that aren't listening to the FC, that have got out of position, that haven't put their prop mods on, or have got caught out of position, that sort of thing. You will be primaried if you're isolated, guarantee. Any FC that is calling targets on grid to try and break up a Logi or break up a fleet like that, that's what they will do. So I spoke about this the other day, and it's about the primary targets. When a primary is called, it means this is the target that you should lock and be shooting. When a primary target is called, stay on that target. Don't deviate until it is, and I've written until it is dead, but I think I meant dead. So until it's dead. So in effect, what you want to be doing is locking up the primary target and shooting it. It's really, really important because you'd be amazed at how many people don't do it. They will choose something else that they think is more appropriate. Now, one person is not going to kill a ship unless it is something they're not meant to be shooting. And with the greatest respect, if they're not listening, they shouldn't be in the fleet. So stick on the primary target. It's so, so important. Which leads me nicely on to the secondary target. Now, dependent on which FC you're fine with, often both a primary, secondary, tertiary target may be called. Now, it's really important that the damage application is focused on your primary. The secondary target is called for you to lock it up so that when the primary target dies, you can instantly shoot the secondary target rather than have to start locking it. I think if you're in a battleship, if you haven't locked that secondary target, it might take you 5 or 10 seconds or so to lock that target, depending on the size of the hull. This will, by locking it whilst the other target's being shot, it will reduce your delay in application of damage to that target. Don't shoot the secondary target until the primary has died. Don't shift primary onto the secondary until it's dead, basically. Now, just one last thing, but in effect, what I'm trying to say is, do yourself a favor, load the appropriate ammo, stay on the primary target until such time that it's dead, and then switch to the secondary, by which time that will obviously be the primary. Now, disengage. I do call this sometimes, unsurprisingly. Basically, this means stop shooting. Drop all E-War, drop all aggressive modules. I can't stress how important it is to do it when I say to do it. Disengaging at the same time means that the FC will know what everyone's combat timer is, and it allows them to regroup, and it allows them to reset, and then enables them to move together with no aggression. If half the fleet say, actually, no, I'm going to carry on shooting that target because I just want to, it means that half the fleet will be aggressed when the FC takes half the fleet through that gate. More importantly, if everybody does and follows that disengage order at the same time, it means everybody's timer will elapse at the same time. So it's really important to disengage when the FC says so, in order that you don't get left behind with aggression. If you get left behind with aggression, that's on you. You're going to be split from the fleet. A ship that's split from the fleet will be isolated, and you will end up being a sitting target. You will die, basically. And I'm not going to go on about warp out for too much. I think it's fairly obvious. If you're in a battle and all of a sudden the grid changes really, really quickly, or the fight becomes unachievable, factoring in something or other, and it goes, the grid all of a sudden goes horrible, the FC will call for everyone to disengage and warp out. So disengage is the first call, warp out will be the second call. There may be that the FC says disengage, warp out, starburst and warp out, overheat your prop mods, warp out. You need to be lining out and getting safe, that sort of thing. So straight away you've got five of the things that you now know what has been mentioned sort of previously. You now know what those mean. Hey. When you warp out, it's always good, whilst you're actually warping out mid-warp, bookmarks and mid-safe on the way. So a simple way of doing that, and you can have this one for free, is just hitting Control B and Enter, and that will just drop a random bookmark in space. I've got hundreds of bookmarks in space called X, which is X marks the spot. So it's always really good to just chuck some mid-safe along the way, so that you can, in effect, you can walk back to that location and be in a relatively safe location for a short amount of time. Now, if you're really, really quick, you can also bounce around systems. So warp to A to B and then go back to your mid-safe, and then warp from that mid-safe to another celestial, then bookmark on the way, so you've got an unaligned safe within system. Pick long distances if you can, and that way you've got greater grid coverage through the system. You can have that tip for free. Hold DPS. Oh, sorry, not hold DPS. When the FC says overheat. The FC is telling the fleet to overheat their weapons for maximum damage in an attempt to break a target that's on grid. If you have 10 or 20 or 30 ships all overheating at the same time, that might mean that super tanky ship might break under that overheat. Overheat when the FC orders you to do so. You can do it in between and so on and so forth, but I think it's most effective done together. One person throwing in an extra 5% isn't going to make the difference. 20 or 30 ships throwing in an extra 5%, it causes your DPS to swell significantly. Okay, so hold DPS. That means that you should turn off all guns and not shoot or apply drones to a target. Generally, this will be called on pods so that everybody gets on the kill. Everybody wants to get on kills in these fleets. So if the FC calls for hold DPS, it means that not everybody is on that kill. Ideally, I want to get everyone killed. That's the cut thrust of it. People go out to be bloodthirsty killers and so on and so forth. If you hear hold DPS, just respect. This is about respect. If you don't respect that comment, you are potentially going to kill that ship, and you're also disrespecting your fleet mates. So just pull your DPS. You've got a point on it. If you've got a scram on it, so on and so forth. See, it's not going anywhere. Just pull DPS, and then that way everyone will get on a kill, and everyone will be super happy. And drones in. If you've got like logi drones or damage drones, or any drone really, when the FC calls drones in, just recall your drones. If you don't recall your drones there and then, it's totally on you when you get warped out, especially if you're aligned, because there's minimal chance you'll be able to control space if you're aligned. And there's a chance that you'll lose those drones. Now, if it's a mid-safe, you might be able to go back if you've got it bookmarked. But again, it's just act on it accordingly, sort of thing. So. Now, local spike, this is generally called by the person who's covering local watch. Now, local spike, I think, is a bit of a subjective thing, because I don't want to know if it's +1s, +2s, -1s, -2s. However, if local all of a sudden goes up 10, 15, 20, 30, 70, 80, 100, it's totally reasonable to say on comms. Because the FC might not see. They could be looking at Dotland, they could be in alt tab looking at something else, strategic related sort of thing. Local spike can mean that there is a hostile fleet coming into us. If that's the case, the FC needs to know. In some instances, it means that we can aggress them. It means that we can engage them. But in other instances, it means that the FC needs to GTFO. They need to formulate a plan to get us safe, to get us out, to get us home, or to get some distance between the local people coming in, basically. I have no qualms with you saying local spike. Don't be scared or shy of calling it. If you notice that it hasn't been said by the dedicated person that's chosen to do it, they could be, looking at something else, so on and so forth. But it's really important that strategically that the FC knows there and then, as soon as a threat might be incoming. If they miss that, chances are they've missed it for a reason, and chances are they've missed it and they're not going to be able to act on it. So it could be that there are probes on 0, it could be, within 1 AU sort of thing. The FC will need to know. Kind of covered this with prop mods on, but when the FC calls you to put your afterburner or NWD on, it means turning on your prop mod, your propulsion mod. It's fairly obvious. I've kind of covered it really to an extent, but it allows you to pull range from your current location. It could be that you're on gate at 0. It could be at a planet that you've just walked to GTFO after an engagement. You don't want to be sat at a planet at 0 for the exact reasons I told you about warp at ranges, so on and so forth earlier on. It could be that you're on by a structure. Whatever, either way, you don't want to be left behind. So you want to put your prop mod on and take the alignment or go to the alignment the FC calls. If a fleet lands on you and you're still at 0 at the sun, waiting or not doing anything, basically, you're going to get tackled. It's really, really important to put your propulsion mod at that point so that we all remain roughly together and we don't get too spread out. This is actually most important when you're on grid at a gate. And the reason being is if you want to walk to that gate, you've got to be more than 150 kilometers away from it. If I call burn away from gate and you get 50k off, 60k, 70k off gate, and the remainder of the fleet's at 150, 160, we can warp to gate. You can't. You're going to have to either burn out 100 kilometers more and then warp, or burn back to gate. If you have to burn back manually, you're right within dodge of getting caught. In effect, you want to be in the same position as where the FC is, in effect. See it from their eyes and see it from their location, see it from their position. You will see, if you get in the mindset of keeping, almost like being a shadow around that person, you will see what the FC is doing and you will begin to understand. And I kind of say think sponge. So literally just absorb what's going on in terms of what that FC is doing on that grid. It's a good tip, that one. Prop mods off. It's exactly the opposite. If CFC says prop mods off, they're sufficiently happy the fleet is away from danger and away from imminent danger turn off your prop mod at that point. It could be exactly what I just mentioned. It could be you're aligning to a gate from 300. Now, if you turn your prop mods on in a Raptor, within 10 seconds you'll be, 50k down the grid sort of thing. Before you know it, you won't be able to walk to that gate. So just turn your prop mod off. You will become isolated otherwise, and you will become a sort of sitting target. So just be mindful when the FC says that. Because it will lead you to a lot of these things will lead you to being isolated, and that's exactly what you don't want to be in EVE, I think. The dictors. I'm going to talk about dictors now. So dictor bubble up. Anyone that doesn't know about dictors, interdictors are destroyers that basically deploy a mobile warp disruption bubble. It's an area of effect sphere which allows or does not allow ships to warp from within it. Dictor bubble up, that will be what is called when an interdictor is asked to deploy a bubble. Yeah, die alone, don't be alone. So it's where the FC where the dictor deploys a mobile warp disruptor, and anything within that sphere will not be able to warp. There are certain edge cases, but I won't cover that because that's another whole topic in itself. Any ship that arrives at the edge of that bubble or within that bubble will not be able to warp, and therefore you'll be able to tackle it and destroy it. So you will hear things like bubble up. It's essential to listen for when bubbles are deployed. If local spikes and we get a hostile fleet into us, you're going to be caught in that bubble. So you're now threatened. So you should always treat that as soon as that bubble goes up, you need to be looking at distances. What is the shortest distance out of this bubble? What is the best alignment? What is the best location for me to get safe? Interdictors are great, but if you look at them, they are probably the most dangerous ship on that grid for everyone. And it's not just hostiles, it's for friendlies as well. Logi get caught in them. Dictors get caught in them. XCs get caught in them. Often with smart bomb battleships, in all fairness. So kind of mentioned here about defensive bubbles. In EVE Online, a defensive bubble is a warp disruption bubble deployed not to trap enemies, but to protect your fleet or control the battlefield. So they can trap the enemies. I know it's a bit of a edge case really, but in effect you're using a bubble to protect you, to put a bubble between you and a fleet so they can't warp directly to you. It prevents enemy ships from warping directly to you. So in effect, I'll say defensive bubble up, and it will be a bubble that protects us, which if the fleet warps to that gate that we're sat on and we're a 0, they will land at the edge of the bubble. We can take the gate. They have to burn to the gate. So they have a bit of time to get through. So it allows us to then warp to the next, jump, get into the next system, warp to the next gate, drop another bubble at the out gate, so on and so forth. Yeah, very, very good to use in, obviously, nullsec and wormhole. Catch bubbles. Often you'll hear catch bubbles called. Now, a catch bubble in EVE Online is a type of warp disruption bubble that is strategically placed to catch ships that are warping to a specific location. It's a powerful tool for intercepting enemies before they reach their destination. And a catch bubble is placed in line between the celestial object, like a gate, station, planet, whatever it might be, and their warping location. So any ship warping from that object gets pulled out of warp early directly into that bubble. Those of you that are on the fleet last night, we did a couple of them and they worked pretty effectively. I think we killed a Crusader in one. I think we did 2 or 3 maybe last night, I think it was. And obviously, people that get caught in the bubble, they can't warp out of that bubble until they clear that bubble, as I kind of alluded to earlier. Now, how it works. When a ship warps to a location, EVE calculates a straight line warp path. So gate 1 to gate 2. If a bubble is within 500 kilometers of that line and between the origin and the destination, the ship gets pulled into the bubble. The ship lands and often surrounded by hostiles if it's been set up as a trap. They can't warp out, so therefore they're caught. So it's a very, very, very good way of catching targets unaware because they can't do anything. They can't burn to gate because they're at range. They can't warp because they're surrounded by a load of dudes in the middle of a bubble or at the edge of the bubble, and there's not much they can do other than sort of die heroically or very silently. Hopefully silently. I've mentioned here drag bubbles. You've got catch bubbles, you've got drag bubbles. Drag bubble in EVE Online is a similar sort of thing, but it's actually put behind the destination. So you have the origin gate, you have the destination gate, and then a range behind. I used to do 100 kilometers for when I was sort of doing bubble camps, because something burning to gate that you are tackling is 100-kilometer burn, so it's quite a long way. So even if you're on your own, kind of soloing or so on and so forth, they're going to overshoot their intended landing point and get pulled into that bubble past their destination. There's also the WTF OMG kind of thing, because you literally, when you warp through the gate, your camera, if your camera is selected on that gate, is going to just do this weird swirling thing where you lose all orientation as to where you are in space. 1 minute your camera's pointing forward, the next minute it's pointing backwards where you just come from. So it's very, very disorientating. And drag bubbles, catch bubbles, they're awesome. Great fun to use. Now, it's really important that when you're in fleet, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, that you listen for when bubbles are called and the different types of when they're called. If you hear that a defensive bubble's gone up, you know that on your out gate there is going to be a bubble and that you're going to land 10k, 12k off gate. If you hear that a catch bubble has gone up, you know that you're going to be 50k, 60k, 70k, 80k off gate. If you know that there's a drag bubble, just use different alignments, use different planet structures, so on and so forth to warp to. Anything that's off the alignment of that warp vector will mean that you will not get dragged into that bubble. Now, I'm going to add one caveat to that because I just thought of it. If there is an anchored bubble on a gate, like a large mobile warp disruptor, no matter where you warp to and warp from, you will get caught when you warp to that gate eventually. Even if it's, obviously if it's at 0, in his third commas, if it's at 0, you will always get caught on it when you warp to that gate eventually. If it is called that a defensive is up, or a catch bubble or drag bubble is up, if in doubt, warp to a planet or a structure on the same grid so that you can 5-degree directional scan it, and so that you can actually see your warp disruption Pobron scanned. Basically, if in doubt, warp to something so that you can scan it so that you don't get caught in the trap. I hear so many people getting caught in bubbles that we've deployed, and it's so frustrating because it's been said, and those bubbles will not be up without not their knowledge. Anyway, that's my rant over about bubbles. So I'm going to just touch on Booshes, double Booshes, command destroyers. A command destroyer is a ship that can fit a micro jump field generator, which is a module that's unique to command destroyers. It can jump up to 25 players that in sub-capital ships 100 kilometers in the direction that that ship is facing. And it's often used for like repositioning fleets or scattering enemies, breaking logi chains. Apparently, it's derived from the sound the jump field generator makes, because it goes boosh. Now, what you can do with booshes is you can actually do 2 booshes at the same time. It's called a double boosh. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to relocate a fleet from 0 on a gate, for example, to 200 kilometers away. There are certain things that you have to do to enable you to do it. A lot of it's about timing, so on and so forth. However, that's pretty much it. So if, for example, you're out in a fleet and the SC says, right, there's a target there, can we try Boosh onto it? Let's try Boosh onto it. So the Boosh pilot will say something like, probably, okay, Boosh 1 spooling. So ideally, you want to be within that area of effect, which is 6 kilometers off that ship. So if you know that your Boosh 1 is XYZ pilot, be within 6 kilometers. If you're within 6 kilometers of that ship, you will get transferred 100 kilometers in that direction, and you will then be able to tackle that target that's 100 kilometers away. So it's a great mechanic for, I think it's a great mechanic for small game. It's a great mechanic for larger fleets though, because it allows you to spearfish targets. And what I'm not going to touch on spearfishing because that is that's like next level kind of thing. Somebody will mention spearfishing and you think, well, what the hell's that? But when you see it, it's amazing. Literally booshing through a fleet and grabbing 3 or 4 targets at the same time is tremendous when that happens. Love it when a pattern works out like that. But Boosh is amazing. A couple of things about Boosh is don't scram the target that we're trying to Boosh, because it will not work. And if you do have a scram on that target, just call up to the FC, let them know. It's about Blops here, because some people were saying, what's Blops? I don't know what that is, sort of thing. It's I've called it a Black Ops battleship. Now, in all fairness, it could be a Blops gang or with multiple covert ships. Now, a Blops battleship itself is a T2 battleship specialized in covert and smuggling operations, which can open a covert ops portal generator for any ship capable of fitting a covert ops cloak. Thanks to its sort of integrated jump drive. You might hear Blops mentioned, but that's basically what it is. I wouldn't get too het up on the different mechanics of it, because if you're thinking about Blops fleets and so on and so forth, they're incredibly expensive. Get the basics down, do some cloaky gangs, bombers and so on and so forth. Start small, think big. Get to Blops in the future. Now, Batphone, I added this purely because sometimes it gets used and you might think, what the hell is going on here? Now, a Batphone is a metaphorical device with which to call enforcements, or reinforcements, I should say. It could be that you bring frenemies. It could be that you bring friends. It could be that you are trying to escalate. Anybody that's flown with me will know that the ships we fly are small, but we often tackle larger targets, and we do Batphone other NPSI groups, other like roaming groups, so on and so forth, to come and kill the ship. If you see what I mean. So you might hear the word Batphone mentioned. That's basically what it means. It is pretty much picking up a phone, metaphorical phone, and going, "Hey, dudes, do you want to come and kill this big stuff?" That's pretty much what it is. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it's going to be, it's a bit annoying. I put in Defang because I think it will be. I sometimes do use it, and when you hear the word Defang, you think, "What the heck is this guy talking about?" Now, it basically means to kill the drones that are on grid. So set up a drone overview, set up a drone tab, and just shoot the drones. If they're fighters from a like a Thani or something like that, shoot the fighters. Same thing. Just defang, kill. It's the things that can kill us you want to be destroying. If it's a drone boat like an Ishtar or something bigger, focus on defang. If that is its only form of offend, they will either lose the drones or they will scoop them back, and we will then prevent them from actually attacking us. If you focus fire on the drones and kill them, you will be able to one-shot them in, with sort of 4 or 5 people. So it's a really super way of like just whittling down the person's damage down so it just mitigates the damage against you. So D-scan, I kind of touched on this earlier on. That is exactly that. It's your directional scanner. Directional scanners are used by scouts, skirmishers, and also the person who's scanning, obviously for 14, 7, and 1, sort of locally. You can use it to get approximate directions of ships, I should say. If somebody is trying to scan a ship, it is sometimes actually nice, and the say the combat probe is trying to drop probes and they're setting their probe distances and so on and so forth, waiting for the probes. If you can just narrow it down to 5 degrees, just say, oh yeah, it's 5 degrees or 10 degrees, 15 degrees over towards planet 4. I've got in between 5 and 6 AU. That prober then knows that if they plonk their probes in that approximate range direction, they will get a hit that allows them to narrow that range down and narrow that distance down. So your D-scan, I say it to everybody, if you want to learn to use your D-scan, jump in an interceptor, take a filament, and just go out to nullsec and set destination back to your home station. But go and hunt targets, but do a catch and release program. Go out hunting for targets, go and find some targets, put a point on them, and then just go. it will confuse the hell out of them because they'll think there's a freak coming. But it will give you the practice and it will give you the wherewithal about you to understand how to use your D-scanner, how to use your probes, and so on and so forth. So it's a really, really, really good way of getting used to scouting, skirmishing, getting out and getting active, and understanding what the scouts are doing. Because if you're sat in a fleet and a scout's saying, "Well, I've got him on this," and so on and so forth, chances are you either know what they're talking about or you don't know what they're talking about. If you know what they're talking about, you can go out and emulate that and practice it and so on and so forth. For those of you that went along to Rev's presentation the other day, he is one of the top scouts, I would say, out and about. And if you didn't see that presentation, I'm assuming that'll go up soon, Laura and Bates. Set aside an hour of your time, watch that presentation. It will be amazing. I guarantee that. I wasn't even there, I couldn't make it, unfortunately, but watch it. It will be amazing. Magic. D-scan is life, basically. I include about links up, links down. You'll hear this for command destroyers, basically, and sometimes if you're in bigger fleets, sort of links, boats and whatnot. In effect, this is command bursts, modules that provide various bonuses to your allied ships. It's an area of effect. It improves things like armor, shield, ship speed, weapon performance, depending on which one to use. So if the FC says links up, unless you're in the linked ship, you don't really need to do anything other than sort of stick within that range. And in all fairness, if you're anchored up, you will be within the correct location. I haven't split off all of the different E-War calls. Point, Scram, Web, Damp Track, Paint You. These will all get called. In effect, you've got warp disruptors, you've got warp scramblers, you've got stasis web fires. If I'm going to add two caveats on a couple of them. If a scram is called on a ship, it's particularly useful because it shuts down that ship's MWD. So chances are, if you've scrammed a target and it is something that could be a higher value ship, for example, like say an Orthus or a Argus or whatever it might be, Laylaps or a Raiju or whatever it is. I'm joking about that. Chances are it will stop that ship from kiting out and pulling range, and it will stop that ship from burning away. So it's really, really useful for the FC to know which ships have been scrammed and if they are high value targets, because it will often mean that target is really, really vulnerable, and it will allow the FC to then primary that. If it's scrammed, it ain't going anywhere if it's a kite ship. And if it's not going anywhere, the FC needs to know that. I'll say one thing on Weber fires. If a Web has been applied to a ship, and if they're bonus ships, that will be a very, very good primary also, because if it's bonus webs from like a Hyena or something like that, or Rapier, Hugin, whatever it might be, that ship will not be going at any speed whatsoever. It means that your damage application against that ship will be very, very high. Chuck a couple of paints on it, that thing will go down like, it will just burn super quickly. There are other E-War calls. I'm not going to go through them. I know there's a whole class dedicated to E-War. But to know that those calls will be made is the most important thing. So you understand what they are. I've included TAC and Perch because some people will call, say, "Oh, just warps the FC at TAC." TAC basically means tactical. It's a location in space which can be warped to directly without getting caught in interdiction bubbles, and it's really, really useful to see what is going on at that location. So it could be a gate perch, so it could be 300k gate perch, that sort of thing, so that the FC could get eyes onto that gate. Now, quite often they're called perches, like I did that time. I've put here, it could be above, below, sideways, wherever it is. They're basically, it's like a bird perch. Think of it like that. It's found in a location in a high position with a view all around. Just think of a bird perch, basically. And that's the kind of origin to it. I call them tacs usually because perches sometimes, why when we walk into that fish? But anyway. I'm just going to touch on Thera and Pochven very, very briefly. Thera, who doesn't know about Thera, just put T in the chat. There may be a few of you that don't. Yes, Victor does, and a couple of people may not know. The Thera is basically, it's a special system. It's a very special system indeed. I like to think of it as like a wormhole superhighway. You can hop in from one side of New Eden and exit near your destination elsewhere, and just use wormholes to get elsewhere. It saves you jumping or taking 50, 60 hops to get somewhere. You could just hop into Thera, take one warp into Thera, and then hop out 30 jumps away, and you've saved yourself an hour's travel time. They're great for NPSI roams. I'm not going to talk about the whole huge amount because I think it warrants a whole class in itself. If you hear Thera or hear Thera mentioned, that's what it is. It's basically a wormhole superhighway that allows you to raid nullsec, allows you to raid wormholes, so on and so forth, and also come back from nullsec into sort of low sec, high sec sort of thing. So there's a website called eScout. Somebody just wants to link that. That's a really useful website that's maintained by, I think it's Shadow Cartel, isn't it? I think it is. And they basically bookmark all the wormholes. Yep, there you go. Glad you put it in the chat. Thank you. And basically allows you to raid different nullsec areas sort of periodically. We use it loads. So you should come and have a look. Pochven, I know Booker and the RWG guys took complete out yesterday to Pochven. Pochven is kind of a special region space created in the Trig invasion storyline back in 2020. There's 27 former Empire systems that were basically pulled into Triglavian space. They form a triangle. I'm not going to talk about it a huge amount. It's way too spooky for me. It scares the shit out of me, to be honest. Pardon the S. Again, like Thera, it's a whole class in itself. If you hear about Pochven, just think, or Thera, think that's what it is about. It's like a spooky bit of space that, when you get there, it's super fun. You always think, it's a really nice area of space to be in. So, but that's basically cut thrust of it. Pochven, you will hear it occasionally. Now, last couple of slides here, actually, the last few slides. The Filament, you might hear this used. In the fleets that I run, sometimes we're over 25 people. Filament is a single-use activation item that, when activated, transports you and your ship to a specific location. It's not a specific location that you choose, though, however. They're used to teleport your fleet to random nullsec or low sec regions, I think it is. And they're great for NPSI fleets and PvP roams. They are a great addition to EVE. I used to locate myself on border regions to nullsec. As soon as I created Filament, I just moved everything to Keacte and just base out Keacte. You can take a Filament and just bounce into nullsec. They are great. They're a great addition to EVE, basically. They'll save you a significant amount of time. There's no guarantee that where they drop you, though, that there will be content. Depending on what filament you take. Noise filament take you to sort of quite a quiet part of space, and signal filament take you to a part of nullsec where there might be activity. So it depends on the filament, and what you want to get out of it. They are great. I would challenge anybody to literally pick 5 people from the chat and just say, hey, we should go and take a filament, and just take an armor frigate, just take anything like an assault frigate, so on and so forth, take a filament and just go and do some little bit of PvP. It is great fun doing it that way. Already recommend it. So similar to the warp at range at some, warp ESS at ranges. Now, an ESS or encounter, I forget what it stands for, encounter surveillance system, I think it is, something like that. It's a dead space installation that collects and stores and dispenses shares of the NPC bounty. The great thing about it is that if you warp to these dead space areas and then just burn away, so put your prop mod on and just burn away from the landing point, nobody can warp to you within that location because you're in dead space mission and sort of complex. So you're relatively safe. So provided a ship doesn't come into that ESS that's faster than you, you're basically safe to just go and take a 10-minute break in there. We often take breaks in there just to go, stretch the legs, so on and so forth. So you're relatively safe, provided you're not tackled, obviously, by a ship that's faster than you. Now, sometimes a hostile ship will warp to the SS to get safe. Now, if the FC calls you to warp at ranges again, just do exactly what I said earlier on, warp at ranges and vocalize it on comms. It will mean if that target lands at a location, we've got a variety of ranges covered, and then we can kill it, sort of thing. So it's exactly like I sort of said with Warp to the Sun on top. Now, Podex is probably being used quite a lot by people, sadly. In PvP, there are casualties. If your fleet mate dies and they're left in their capsule, quite often they'll say Podex me please. Now, this literally means Pod Express, and they're asking for you to shoot at them so that they can go and reship and come back to the fleet. I don't like the idea of Podexing. The reason being is because it gives people aggression, and so I'd rather people self-destruct. However, I'm not going to be that guy that says you can't Podex your mate, because chances are, if they're Podexed, we probably just killed somebody. So we've probably got aggression anyway. So I wouldn't challenge anywhere on it. So, but that's what it means, Podex. It's not like, I don't know, like FedEx or whatever. It could be, I suppose. Shotgun. Shotgun means to load grid in the system and warp to a random anomaly. I sometimes use it myself and say shotgun the anomalies. It will generally be shotgunning to a combat anomaly. And warp, similar to warping at ranges. Once you hear one anomaly called, so Keacte XYZ anomaly, you wouldn't warp to XYZ anomaly. You'd warp to ABC, then DEF, then so on and so forth. Obviously, they're not going to be called that, but until you see that or hear that all of the anomalies have been covered. If in the process of warping across that area of space, that system, you see things on scan, vocalize it. Say, I've got an Ishtar on scan, 30 degrees towards planet 4. We can then kind of isolate roughly where, location of those targets potentially. It's something more commonly used in, I would say, like probably more sort of small gangs. However, there used to be a very, very well-known FC, NPSI FC, that used to do something called Sunday morning shotgun party. It was the best weekend fleet in EVE. Many, many, many hundreds of billions was just destroyed on that. Unfortunately, he didn't play EVE anymore, which is super sad. And I cannot even remember his name, sadly enough. Now, because of the nature of shotgunning, there's going to be potentially multiple points that might be called. So just listen to the FC, listen to the person that's called the point, so that you know who to warp to. It's really important the FC is given enough space on comms to get the to get the orders over, so we know where to warp to. SB Desto. It means exactly that. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Just head as fast as you can to that destination. It could be generally to find a target. It could be to get to an area of nullsec. It could be to get to a location to now allow us to take a filament. It could be to get to Thera. Whatever it means is just move as quickly as you can. So assume jump on contact, assume warp next gate. Generally, it will probably be through maybe high sec, low sec. Sometimes it will be in null sec though. And if we've got good enough scouts in front of us 2-3 out, they will call any recon ahead of us, so that we don't jump into any like smart bomb and battleship gangs. Tell you what will happen. There's loads more. I'm kind of surprised that I've got to an hour and a quarter in, so apologies for taking so long. I've reached the end of the list. There's loads of slides here, and there are more. There are more commands that you will hear. I've tried to kind of put it in such a way that it gives you the familiarity for when you next go to an NPSI fleet. It will make more sense when you're in it and when you're actually in that fleet, and you will become more familiar with their use and their meaning and what the expectation is when you're there. But hopefully, you've got a bit more of a thorough understanding of what it means. And if you haven't, take any questions. This is my last slide. I'll just say this. If, when you're in a fleet and you hear a command that I haven't covered, tell me, because I'd like to include this. You might update it, so on and so forth. So just drop me a DM and just let us know. And thank you very much. There's a couple of QR codes there if you want to come along to any of the fleet's roams. There's our Discord channel. There's the calendar. That pretty much wraps it up. that's the end of the presentation. Happy to take whatever questions. I know, obviously, conscious you've got a fleet in like 12 minutes, so let's try and limit the questions, sort of 7-8 minutes, something like that, and then just ask away. And that was a whistle stop tour there. But like I've been on a fleet. So were there any questions in the chat? Let me scan back and have a look, see. So is this accurate? Burn and then overheat. Right, I would say in terms, I think, Raina, I think you were talking with regard to starbursting, I believe, maybe. Burn and overheat. Right, it would be put your prop mod on. You can there's kind of two schools of thought. You can overheat your prop mod before you activate it. I don't generally do that. Wait one cycle, because on frigates and so on and so forth, the cycle timer on them is so quick, you'll be on overheat before you know it. Your best is to just get your prop mod on, align out, or just burn in a random direction. I mean, I shouldn't say the word burn, that's a bit misleading. Put your prop mod on and then angle your ship in a random direction and then overheat your prop mod as you go out. Yeah, sorry, I see Laura said that was hard. Don't be alone. I mean, has there ever been a bubble made with bubbles in EVE? I'm not sure. I mean, to be fair, I've seen some horrendous bubbles on some gates. 500 kilometers, yeah, that's your edge. They used to be, I think they used to be 1,000 at one point, I think, but yeah. Yeah, my sound effects do. Yeah, Gladius, don't mention the pipe bombs, please. I don't think so. Okay, so I don't think there are any questions. So Rev did a lot of in-game demo. I thought he would, actually, because he normally, what he does is, I think he's done it a couple of times when he's recorded himself, is that he'll just like literally just take a filament and then just go out hunting and just do like catch and release. But I don't think there's any questions. So just, yeah, I mean, if there are, just now's the time. If you can't think of any questions now, just DM me. I'm quite open for anybody asking, if you're out on a fleet and somebody says something, or if you're out on a fleet with me and I say something, you don't understand it, I'd rather you ask than sit there in silence, confused to bejesus and not knowing what's going on. Because chances are, if you don't know what's going on, you're going to die because you're not following the instruction, because you don't understand the instruction. So I would rather you know than see all of a sudden I've got pod on grid because you've sat stationary on a gate with bombs up or something, I don't know. But yeah. Yeah, and Leaf, I think Leaf, that is a very, very fair point. Familiarity with the fleet vernacular, for want of a better expression, it will make things so much easier just with understanding. It just makes it significantly easier with time. All I can say is just get out, get active. If you see what I mean. So it's, I don't, to be honest, I'm trying to think who would be a good streamer to watch who does NPSI. I mean, I would have said B, but obviously he's more doing the sort of CCP leads there. I mean, to be fair, they're probably good ones to watch as well. If you can, actually, I would say definitely Pando. That's probably a good one to watch. Yeah, and Leaf mentioning about raising the volume of the FC. I've got quite a low voice, as in pitch. So other people generally do kind of cut above sort of thing. So sometimes you need to boost the FC, so it does help. And Rev dropping bubbles on you. He just GTFOs, doesn't he? Okay, so Nolan has asked, do you have recorded fleet so we can see what it sounds like? If you go to any of my streams, so go to Twitch, FUN.inc, that you'll be able to check back on some of the old kind of fleets. There will be some on there. I haven't streamed the last couple of fleets. I've been having some internet issues, as anybody that was on fleet yesterday knows. And I did shout at the cloud slightly yesterday, in all fairness. I like to think I'm high energy. At the end of the day, I'm quite often not like. And Raina has said, if there are multiple systems dropped into fleet chat without extra contact, well, those usually fall. Right. So Raina, that happened a lot last night. And that was, well, there's kind of two issues going on here. And there's kind of two issues. And what the first issue is .lan ESI has, how do I put this in as nicer? Is .lan ESI is basically shout the bed. So the issue is you can't right click on .lan and set destination from there. What I would normally do is right click on the destination .lan, set destination, then drag that into the fleet. I'm having to manually type those, select the text, right click, and then find the location until, so I think I've got a workaround now. Somebody's told me that you can apparently install it on Chrome and so on and so forth. So hopefully by tomorrow. And I've actually had a bit of a play around on lunch today with EVE. I'm still not happy with it. I need to go to Specsavers, I think. The eyes aren't great. But yeah, so yesterday was a bit of a tricky one, Raina, if I'm honest. And it didn't help that I was having so many network issues. So apologies for that again. But what I would say is for the most part, normally it's very, very clear with where we're going. I may have said this on one of the previous presentations. Flying internet spaceships for me is like flying fast and furious. When you see like Star Wars, it's little ships going buzz, buzz, wee, wee, bang, bang, so on and so forth. Pew, pew, that sort of stuff. And because of that, that's kind of just how I fly. I don't like battleships. I sometimes fly them, unfortunately. But it's not my niche. It's what I don't really enjoy. So flying fast and furious, that's where it is for me. So yeah. Cheers, Gladius. Take care, buddy. I think he's already gone now. Oh no, he's still there. And also scouts and hunters. Yeah. That was one thing last night. We had a big support pilot left. So normally probably about 35s, normally mid 30s, late 30s usually. And last night having sort of 55, 54, wherever it was in fleet last night, it was a challenge. Plus my network I was having loads of problems with my internet as well. So actually, while I remember, has my internet been cutting out at all today? Don't think it has it? Which is good. Excellent. Okay, that's good. That's a good sign straight away. Trust me, I'll hopefully be all right tomorrow. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so that's it really. If anybody's got any if any has any burning questions that come up afterwards, just DM me. I'm happy to help out. I think it's fairly obvious. I'm a huge fan of NPSI, huge fan of EVE UNI specifically, and engaging with newer pilots and so on and so forth. Newer pilots are the bloodline. I've played EVE 21 years, and you see a huge churn of new pilots leaving because they don't have support. It would be disingenuous of me to sit here and not support you guys. So please come on to the fleets, get active, enjoy it. These fleets are on for you guys, and don't let anybody say anything otherwise, because you guys rock.